So it is a huge crisis in America right now, where we have grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. Now, a new study shows grandparents who are stepping in for childcare could be using, ready for this one, old school practices, which I know don't go hand in hand with grandma and grandpa. But the practices of maybe what you knew growing up when you had kids 20, 30, 40 years ago are much different today, and that could be putting kids at risk. Because the one thing I know about grandparents is this, is they love being told they're doing it wrong. Maria Luce is the empowered mom. She joins me now on News Radio 700 WOW to talk about this. Yes, because it goes over so well, doesn't it, Maria, when you go to grandma and grandpa and you go, hey, you know what? Yeah, we don't do it that way anymore. Because they tend to listen to you. They tend to be open to new ideas.
Always. And you always want to tell your parents what they're doing wrong, right?
Yeah. I always do that because it works real well with my mom. I was like, Mom, you can't do it. That's the way I always did it, and it was fine.
And you survived, and you're alive,
right.
So you're okay.
Yeah, that's fine. It worked out, right? I love this stuff. So I guess the first question, why would these wonderful people who are stepping up to the plate, let's face it, because of the frailties of what we do it ourselves, how is it what they're doing putting the kids at risk exactly?
Yeah, that's such a great point because labeling it dangerous, that's kind of a slippery slope.
Yeah, it's not.
Because
there's no malice there. There's no intent. They're doing this out of love, going, wow, this, the mom and the dad, or the mom and the dad's lives are ruined. I'm going to take the kid in, and I'm well past the. Yeah, I did my job of raising kids, right? That thing, and now it's got to be horrific to because you love your grandchild. You go, now I've got to be a parent all over again. What a horrible thing.
And it depends on if the grandparents are actually raising them as the guardian and custodian on an everyday basis versus whether they're there, like every couple of weeks or months or once a summer. So you have to kind of look at those elements. But we must say that, come on, most grandparents are loving and want to do the best. There are updated things and new modes of parenting that are happening these days that aren't necessarily dangerous but might be considered out of date. And that's a big difference we need to look at.
Probably one of those has got to be how infants are, because we're going to learn more about SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, and other things too, and that's how a child sleeps. It used to be, we'll put the kid back in bed with us, but you don't want to do that anymore. That's changed, right?
Exactly. That's one of the things that has changed, as well as I know that when my boys I had 3 boys within I still have 3 boys within 21 months, and we had all the ruffles and all the blanket and all the bedding around the crib.
Right.
And you don't even do that these days. So that's even a kind of a subtle difference. But even how you place your baby in bed and how you bandage them, and what a big fever is, and when you call the doctor, those types of things. And then when they get a little bit older, just being aware of social media. That's something that the grandparents may not be apprised upon or up to date on, but they might be. But that's an opportunity, it's a great opportunity for grandparents and moms and dads to have a discussion on what we agree upon, and hey, here's things that I kind of would love for you to consider, as opposed to telling them, no, this is what I want.
Yeah, but you know what, Maria Luce, the empowered mom, if you have a daughter or a son of family, and let's face it, it's the opioid epidemic that's forcing this huge rise in the number of grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. Sadly, I don't think the parents are going to care.
Oh, I hope they do. But honestly, you bring up a great point, because if the grandparents are healthy, or if they're not, or if they're medicated, then that is something. Or if the kids or if the grandparents are not plugged into what kids are doing, then that's again another relevant point that has to be considered.
What about feed a cold, starve a fever? That's what my mom always used to do that way. Feed a cold, starve a fever.
And again, I go back to, you and I are alive, right?
Right.
It's not necessarily safety or something that is dangerous. There are medical advances that show some techniques are better these days. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean your child is in danger when they're with your parents or, your spouse's parents.
Right, right. The answer, of course, is if, you're not hungry because you're sick, then don't eat. But by all means, eat because you need the nutrients to help get better. And don't, the worst thing you do is not hydrate is the other aspect of this thing, too.
And the other thing is, remember, when we were growing up, when I was growing up, I don't know about you, but we had to eat everything on our plate. It didn't matter.
Right.
Now it's like, okay, what do you want? It's like a cafe or a cafeteria. You just kind of pick what you want, or they'll offer it, and that's some of the differences. Some of them are subtle, again, that word dangerous, that depends on the individual family and the individual parents and grandparents, because remember, when we were going out, we would be let out in the morning and would stay out in the neighborhood all day and then would come back when the dinner bell rang. Right.
Nobody died. Nobody got abducted. It was the way it was back in the day.
But it was a different world because there wasn't social media. There was, those types of things. So some of those things you do have to parent differently, and you have to have that discussion with your parents or your spouse's parents about, hey, how are we going to handle this? So really, I look at it as an opportunity to have a discussion. That doesn't mean you demean your parents or the grandparents in any way, because obviously you're still alive. They did a pretty good job, hopefully.
Sure.
But things evolve and parenting changes, and there's a respect that needs to happen on both sides.
I guess the other aspect of this too then is if you are a grandparent too and you're being informed of this stuff, is don't take it personally. It's just there was new technology and new ideas that came out when you were in your childbearing years. You've probably forgotten about it, but that now maybe some of that information has become outdated, and that's the nature of science and medicine, that it's always changing, always evolving, for better, for worse, but largely for better. And don't take it personally and say, well, okay, I never considered that. There's a reason why physicians and others advise you to do it this way. And exactly. I get it. Maria Lucé, the Empowered Mom, thanks again for the time. Appreciate it.
Love being with you.
Thank you so much.